Hello, and welcome back to Exploring Psychology Through Science Fiction. Today we're going to be talking about Caprica, or the future of escape. In Avatar, Jake was able to transfer into an alien body, but this was a unique experience. We'll revisit this idea of an actual physical avatar later in the semester when we talk about surrogates. And in that movie, everyone has an avatar. But this type of physical escape is far beyond our current reach. So let's explore a more plausible scenario that could occur in the near future. This week we watched the first episode of Caprica. While the show is primarily focused on the creation of the Cylons, there is an emphasis on the holobands. The holobands was an evolution of our internet, where people can enter a holographic virtual world. It was originally created for adults, and just like with our internet, pornography was the first industry that really adapted to this new medium. But before long, virtual nightclubs, or V-clubs, were created by adolescents to explore everything from sex to fighting to murder and human sacrifice. The mantra was no limits. This virtual reality allowed adolescents to act out every possible fantasy. The upside of this was that teens were physically safer while pushing limits and going to the extreme, but the premise of the show is that this led to the moral downfall of their civilization. So, to step back from that, first of all, let's just take a look at an example of virtual reality that we currently have. And the one I wanted to focus on was Second Life. So I'm going to have you watch a YouTube almost documentary of it, and then we'll talk more about Caprica. So that gave you a taste of just kind of an example of current virtual reality that we have accessible to us now. To pull it back more to science fiction specifically, there are a number of virtual games. What they're typically referred to are massively multiplayer online role-playing games, abbreviated MMO, MMOG, or MMORPG. Now, the largest of those is probably World of Warcraft, but that's more fantasy based. Some of the sci-fi ones include Star Wars Galaxies, had to mention that one first, EVE Online, Warhammer. If you're more on the comic book genre, there's the City of Heroes and City of Villains. But there's so many of them, any number of them, that people spend significant amounts of time on developing their own character, interacting with a social network, and one way of looking at it is they have this alternative life that is played out on the computer. Right now, it's just watched through a TV, but one of the neatest 3D options coming out soon is called the Oculus Rift. And that's a headset that you wear that's going to put everything into a much more realistic 3D version. And so we'll most likely see a number of games pop up based on that hardware. So let's step back and talk a little bit more about the current internet, because that's really is the closest parallel we have to the holobands from Caprica. So we've seen parallel issues and problems arise out of our World Wide Web that they were referring to in Caprica. First of all, pornography was again one of the biggest movers and shakers of the internet to begin with. But a number of other problems have come out of the internet, such as another modality for victimization of others. You've got online bullying, cyberbullying. You have a new medium for children and sexual predators to seek out victims. Children and adolescents are more easily exposed to inappropriate material. There's less monitoring of children's activities. There can be a loss of physical activity because too much time is spent online. There's threat to personal data. What some people are beginning to complain of is that there's been a move from content creation, which is what we had at the beginning once the internet first really grew. Everybody was trying to put up new stuff on there, to where it's now moved to more of a content consumption. People spend more time just watching YouTube videos rather than uploading them. Other problems are, like we've already been talking about, is escape from the real world. And that kind of leads us to the concept of internet addiction. Now, so I talked about the Oculus Rift. We look at a future possible scenario with the holobands. What happens when our escape mechanisms become more and more realistic? My concern is that I wonder if Avatar Blues is going to become a more and more of a problem as the technology we use to escape becomes more realistic. How many people will choose to escape rather than dealing with problems if they can get away with it? I don't like who I am, but I can create a new avatar and redefine everything about myself. How I look, my sex, how I interact with others, my age, all of that can be completely different for an avatar. And the more realistic it gets for me, the more likely I'll probably be to use that as an escape. But the problem with escape, as we've already discussed, is that while you may feel better in the moment, you're still going to feel bad about yourself because you haven't resolved any of the problems that cause you to feel bad about yourself in the first place. But what this can lead to is that internet addiction. Some people are concerned about video game addiction. Um, these disorders didn't used to exist. These are problems that were created by technology, by the internet, by more and more realistic video games. So let's talk a little bit about internet addiction. Now, is that a real thing? The current DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, and that's what psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health counselors use to define what a mental disorder is. And the DSM-5 was just revised last summer. They did not add internet addiction as an official mental disorder, but internet gaming disorder was added to a section that's developed for further study. This means that the psychologists and psychiatrists who revised the DSM decided that there wasn't enough information to include internet gaming disorder as an official mental disorder, but they recognize that it's a significant condition and needs additional research. So, what is internet gaming disorder? Because it is defined in the DSM, it's just not considered an actual disorder yet because we don't know enough about it. So, it most often involves specific internet games, but it could also involve non-internet computerized games as well. The essential feature of internet gaming disorder is persistent and recurrent participation in computer gaming, typically group games, for many hours. These games involve competition between groups of players, often participating in complex, structured activities where social interactions are a big part of the play. Team aspects appear to be a key motivation. Attempts to direct the individual toward schoolwork or interpersonal activities is strongly resisted. So people are spending time doing the internet gaming instead of other responsibilities that they have. So personal, family, or vocational and school pursuits are neglected. When individuals are asked, the major reasons given for using the computer are more likely to be avoiding boredom rather than communicating or searching for information. So, the proposed criteria, of which you have to have 5 or more of the following 9 items, are: number 1, preoccupation with internet games, which means the individual thinks about previous gaming activity or anticipates playing the next game. Internet gaming becomes the dominant activity in daily life. And just keep in mind that this is separate from internet gambling, which is considered under a more general gambling disorder. The second criteria, withdrawal symptoms when internet gaming is taken away. So these symptoms are typically described as irritability, anxiety, sadness, but there aren't any physical signs of pharmacological withdrawal. So you don't have the shaking and the craving, the physiological craving that you would with a substance use disorder, but you still have the withdrawal as far as emotionally. Number 3 is tolerance, which means you need more and more time playing internet games to get the same feeling of enjoyment or relaxation or avoidance of boredom. So it takes more and more and more to get the same effect. Number 4, unsuccessful attempts to control the participation in internet games. Number 5, loss of interests in previous hobbies and entertainment as a result of playing internet games. Number 6, continued excessive use of internet games despite knowledge of psychosocial problems. Number 7, they've deceived family members, therapists, or others regarding the amount of internet gaming. Number 8, use of internet games to escape or relieve a negative mood. So if I'm feeling helpless or guilty or anxious, then I play internet games to make me feel better. And number 9, has jeopardized or lost a significant relationship, job or educational or career opportunity because of overly participating in internet games. So those are the 9 criteria, and if you have 5 or more of those, then you would diagnose as having internet gaming disorder. One of the discussion questions this week is going to be focused on your reactions to this proposed diagnosis. So, as a psychologist, I'm typically focused on the problems that people are struggling with, that they need help with, but I don't want to always come across as being negative and focusing only on the problematic aspects of escape, of the internet, things like that, because there are huge benefits that we get from technology. If we're looking at the internet, there's been such an increase in access to information, greater access to formal education. We're doing an online class. Increased communication, social networking, entertainment and escape, business opportunities, global interaction. We could go on and on about the benefits of the internet. So don't feel like I'm saying the internet's bad and you shouldn't spend any time on it. It's just that, again, it's about a balance. There are positives and negatives to it, and we need to be looking at both sides. So to summarize, new technology arises typically to address existing problems, but new problems are almost always created because of that new technology. So the internet brought about many solutions to existing problems, but it caused a whole number of them as well. We didn't used to have internet gaming disorder, or worry about online gambling disorder, or worry about kids not getting enough physical activity because they're online. So it has created new problems, but that's the case with just about any new technology. There are always both benefits and negative consequences from new technology. But the neat thing about science fiction is that through sci-fi, there are significant contributions to our society by allowing us to explore the possible benefits and consequences of future technology. So when good writers and movie directors are saying, okay, here's this new technology that's going to be the basis of our story, that gives us a chance to say, okay, here's what we need to think about if we actually develop a virtual world that we're going to interact in. We need to be considering these things going in. So science fiction plays a huge part in how our society develops in response to technology, and how we keep a hold of our morality and work through all of this. So Caprica gave us just one look at what future escape might look at. But we're already dealing with some of those problems with the desire to escape. So keep in mind that technology is cool, but we need to be aware of both the problems that we'll have to overcome as well as the benefits that we get. Hope that was interesting. Have a good rest of the week, and I'll be back soon.